Hey guys, welcome to another video on YouTube. Today we're gonna figure out why people don't want to work anymore. Is it people getting lazy? Or people just becoming unmotivated? Is it the greedy companies potentially making things worse? Today we're gonna go into the channel called How Money Works and watch the video Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. So we're gonna see how that goes, and yeah, so don't forget to give them a subscribe and a like. It looks like it's a pretty popular video. And let's see why people don't want to work anymore.
It's a classic gripe of out-of-touch corporate executives hiring minimum wage workers, or the trust fund baby who is angry that their gym is busy in the middle of the day. Nobody wants to work anymore. Now, I really hate to say this, but
Personally, I don't want to work, but I understand if I stop working, I'm screwed. So I work. Master's got me working. What can I say?
by looking at the numbers, they might have a point. Labor force participation is approaching generational lows even after the pandemic,
What happened in 2020? Gee, oh, the pandemic.
while labor force participation amongst men specifically is the lowest it has ever been. These declines have been happening at the
Before it goes any further, I'm going to assume it is lack of motivation. People, with how expensive life's getting, people feel like whatever they're doing is irrelevant because they're just living paycheck to paycheck and they don't see themselves being able to afford anything like a house.
At the same time that unemployment is theoretically quite low, which, if the economists are to be believed, means it should be easy for people who want to get a job to get a job, right?
I don't know. I know a guy who's trying to get a job and he just can't seem to get a job. And also last year, my grandma that works at Save On, she told me that they have like a pile of resumes that they just sort of ignore because they got more people that are looking for jobs than they need.
Well, not quite.
Could just be my local area.
And these numbers are confusing at best, or downright misleading at worst.
Is people just don't want to go to
There was
work.
a poll I read a long time ago. Only like 18% of Americans feel engaged when they're at work.
I hate my job!
The signs are everywhere.
I hate my job.
Businesses.
I would hate my job too if I didn't work where I worked, or at least the job position I'm in. So the job position I'm in, I'm just on YouTube and TikTok and like Netflix and all that jazz, pretty much all day. And I just press a bunch of buttons. So my days are pretty easy. I feel blessed where I work, but I can definitely see it being a pain. I couldn't do full time fast food anymore. I couldn't do it. I would lose my marbles.
Especially restaurants need employees and they need them
Dude,
now.
less than 20% of the country likes their fucking job.
That's not good.
Okay, so there are two general schools that people fall into when they see that nobody wants to work anymore. The first group are wealthy executives, business owners, or just people who have always worked incredibly hard who don't like that jobs are going unfilled. So they blame it on lazy young people who would rather sit around all day smoking cones and watching
I know I know people who are extremely hard working and will work their butt off when they're young, like, or young people. And I also see people who are on the exact same opposite, that are just so lazy and just don't even want to get a job. I don't think it's the age at the end of the day. I think it's just the person. You're gonna have old people as well who don't want to work, or like are lazy or whatnot.
skibbity toilets. The second school of thought agrees that yes, people don't want to work. They don't want to work demeaning jobs where they won't get paid enough to support a decent quality of life. It's nice when two groups who are so different can agree on something. So really, the only thing left is to work out why people don't want to work. Now, in most cases, the jobs that nobody wants to work fall into one of three categories. The first are jobs that are just paying well below market rates given the experience or the location required. Businesses aren't going to be able to fill a full-stack senior development role in Silicon Valley for $50,000 a year plus equity in their questionable pre-seed startup, but there are still plenty that try. Even entry-level jobs that pay minimum wage in very high cost of living areas are going to be much harder to fill in a city where even finance bros are living in shared housing.
Yeah, that's another thing. You got especially in cities, you got people like five different people living in an apartment or like a complex or whatever it is. It's like one or two bedrooms. Got five people living in there, and they're probably still splitting it like $500+ each. Oh, hi, Topaz.
Now, hot take alert. But just like there are no shortage of crappy businesses and managers that expect to pay workers nothing for world-class skills and experience, there are lots of workers who expect world-class pay with little or no marketable expertise. One of the most insightful pieces of data on this issue is this recent survey right here. It asked a selection of Americans what they considered to be the minimum salary they would need to be financially successful. Now, most of the responses
Let's
to
hear
these
this
numbers
out.
have been laughing at the Gen Zs just entering the workforce who think that almost $600,000 a year is a realistic salary goal.
That's more than someone would need, I think. See, and then another thing is, let's say people started making enough money where they're able to put like $500 to $1,000 away each paycheck, right? And they're like, okay, this is after like food bills, this is after everything, and let's say they can put away $500 to $1,000 each paycheck. At some point, a lot of people will end up buying more things. Let's say they have like a junk car and they're like, okay, I'm gonna upgrade to like this bougie car. Oh, well, my phone's kind of out of date. Let me upgrade my phone. Oh, let's do this and this, and then their monthly payments will now go up, and what they used to have is $500 to $1,000 at the each paycheck they could put to the side now all of a sudden drops dramatically because of all these things they're buying. So I think a lot of people get trapped in, oh, I'm making more money, let me just buy more things, kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Because for most people, it just isn't. Unless you are in a few very specific career paths, there are basically no jobs that pay this money. And even then, you need an insane amount of luck to get those opportunities.
I want to
Now,
search
you
it
can
up.
blame-
How much do doctors make? How much do doctors make in Canada? Yeah, that's not even a doctor. Yeah, that's a lot of money. Jeez.
This on young people who don't really know how the world works yet, or social media that makes it look like every hustle bro is flying private, but it's all distracting from a more interesting data point. The average boomer thinks financial success is achieved with a salary of just under $100,000. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is still almost double the median national salary. But in most major cities where people can actually find jobs that pay this much, $100,000
I feel like $120,000 a year should be enough outside of heavy cities like Vancouver and Toronto and all that jazz. If you live like in a town and stuff, I feel like 120 is fine. But if you live inside a city where like rent's like $3,000+ a month, then I would say like 150,000 a year.
certainly doesn't afford a lifestyle of financial success. There is simply a massive gap in expectations between the generations looking for their first jobs and the group responsible for giving out most of the jobs, so they both agree that nobody wants to work, just for different reasons. The second type of job that nobody wants to work are in workplaces that push their staff, demand unreasonable overtime, or have management that are needlessly abusive.
One thing that bugs me is my lady right now is on a contract down in Hong Kong, and they don't pay her overtime. That's just a thing that they don't do in Hong Kong. Is, yeah, oh, you worked an additional 2 hours? Well, you're not getting paid for that. It's so dumb.
This happens in a shocking amount of businesses across the country. And even if you are lucky enough to avoid a boss that thinks shouting is an effective motivation tool, you have probably worked some overtime out of fear of losing your job or being reprimanded. According to a 2023 workplace survey, the average full-time worker across the country studied is now putting in an average of 9.2 hours of unpaid overtime. These jobs often...
That is unacceptable. That is so unacceptable. Especially in like America and Canada, so-called first world countries, that should not be allowed. That should be brought down instantly. Anyone who works upon their scheduled hours, if they are needed, should be getting paid for it. And the fact that that's a thing that's not happening is absolutely, I'm going to say it, that's absolutely retarded.
don't have much trouble finding people to start, but they do struggle with high staff turnover. The third are simply jobs that never actually existed. You probably all know about ghost jobs by now, but even if you really do want to work, there is a good chance that most of your applications are just going to build out a workforce database, not to actually be considered for employment. Now, whatever.
Also, being like an intern, I think that's what it's called, where you work like for months without any pay, just for a chance to get the job. That's a Harley driver gay right there.
The specific reason, the results are the same. Less people end up working. But aside from settling some beef between entitled Zoomers and some out-of-touch boomers, this data all reveals something more concerning about work in the current economy. It's not that people don't want to work anymore. They simply can't afford to. So it's time to learn how money works to find out what's really behind the worst phrase in the workplace. This week's video is sponsored by MyHeritage. Okay, so yeah. There are millions of people out there that think nobody wants to work because they couldn't hire someone with
No, I'm sure
20
people
years of
want to work.
experience on a programming language that has only been out for 5 years for $15 an hour. There are also people who don't want to work because they think unless they are offered 6 figures in their first role out of high school, it's not worth their time, and they would be better off sitting at home working on their NFT dropship.
If you finish college or university and you don't get the job you want right away, it doesn't matter. I think you need to find a job. Even if you're working at a minimum wage job, it's better to have a job than not a job. And when you work at a different job, you can still work towards trying to get the job that you want. Don't be a barnacle head and it's like, oh, well, I'm like $50,000 in debt now from going to college, and this place didn't want to hire me that I wanted to work. I'm just not going to work till I get to that job that I want. I don't know, find a different job until you can get the job you want. In my books, yeah, that's lazy.
Shipping business. Both of these groups definitely exist in
There's a reason why I still work my job, because I know YouTube's never going to become a thing.
shockingly large numbers. But even though it's really fun to make fun of both sides, it distracts from the much more important reason why labor force participation is getting worse. Well, as you might have been able to guess, this trend is really being driven by specific age groups and specific locations. If you look at labor force participation and exclude the youngest generation of workers and the oldest generation of workers, it's actually approaching all-time highs, which really makes sense when you think about it. It's common for both men and women to work full-time these days, and for most households, it's simply a financial necessity.
I find it kind of sad that we live in a time where both the man and woman have to work. I think in a better society, which we're not in, I feel like if the woman wants to work, she should be able to work. But at the end of the day, if she wants to stay home, she should be able to stay home. And I feel like the man should, in the perfect society, should be able to make enough to be able to afford all their necessities plus some. If just the guy's working, you know. Call me old-fashioned if you want, but I believe if the girl shouldn't feel like she needs to work at the end of the day, just to be able to pay the bills.
So yeah, even if people don't want to work anymore, they kind of are stuck doing it anyway. The reason labor force participation has fallen off in general, though, is because the average is being dragged down by a lot of young workers and old workers. The old workers are the easiest to explain. As people
One thing I've noticed is when it comes to fast food, it's like it's either old people or young people. It's very rarely where it's in the middle ground.
started living longer, retirement ages were pushed back, and more of the population began
I would hate it if retirement went further back than 65. I feel like 65 is fine. And I feel like if you turn 65, you shouldn't have to pay taxes anymore.
working in non-physical jobs. As a result, a larger share of the population over 55 remained in the workforce. This has started to reverse, though, as self-funded
If you can, financially, find a way to set up a retirement fund. I don't know what it's called, but get a retirement fund going. The sooner the better. Because the world's not going to try and help you out when you get old.
retirement systems and general asset prices have allowed a lot of over 55s to step back from the labor force, especially after COVID, as a lot of people received severance packages and decided that an early retirement was better than going back to the office. Labor force participation from young people
I hate working. Hence why I'm doing everything in my power to save up for retirement. Because ain't no way I'm working past 65.
just entering the workforce either out of high school or college is also pulling down the average, just for different reasons. More people than ever are getting a college degree, which means they are starting to work later. And fewer people are working part-time jobs while they study because for many, it's simply not worth it given how much debt they are going to be in when they graduate anyway. This might not also be a shock to you.
Sometimes I think my $50,000 in debt is bad, and then I hear what some other people get into, and I'm like, you know what? My $50,000 of debt is gonna be gone in like 5 years. I think I'll be okay. But yeah, no, some of these college debts are crazy, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's wild.
But it's getting really damn hard to find a job out of college. A few months ago, a post from a professor at Berkeley made the rounds after it spoke about his top students from a top college struggling to find work in technology, an industry that was hiring highly intelligent graduates like this as fast as they could make them just 24 months ago. Previously, a Berkeley CS graduate, even if not a top student, would receive multiple appealing job offers in terms of work type, location, salary, and employer. However, outstanding students, like those with a 4.0 in major GPA, are now contacting me worried because they have zero offers. I suspect this trend is irreversible and likely part of the broader trend impacting almost every employment sector. It's pretty grim stuff coming out of one of the best schools in the country. It might not be the most logical thing to do, but a common reaction from people who...
Question. Do you guys think college is worth it? To a degree? Like, obviously, if you're going to like school to become a doctor or a nurse, something like that's actually gonna make a big that's like in high demand. I feel like obviously those are good ones to go to, or like trade stuff. But like when it comes to like other things, like let's say becoming a game designer, I feel like spending money on something like that, I feel like it would be really hard to find a job in this day and age, especially considering Xbox just laid off like, what was it, 7 or 9,000 employees. So I sometimes don't think college is really worth it. I think it's more who you know than your degree.
can't land a job with a degree they
That's how I got the job I have now. I probably wouldn't have gotten the job where I am now without knowing a person.
got to make them more employable is to just go get another degree. The rate of master's and PhD recipients has grown even faster than people getting an undergraduate degree, because that's now normal to stand out in a highly competitive job market. And to be honest, it's a nice way for people to avoid the reality of the job market for another few years. Spending another 2 to 8 years at college to get advanced degrees means people aren't in the labor force, which pulls down the average to look worse than it really is. So those are the ages that are perpetuating this dumb myth. But this trend is also highly dependent on location. And to see that, you need to go to the place where apparently the absolute least amount of people want to work.
Alabama. I should have guessed. I should have knew. That's wild.
Yes, the Rust Belt state has the lowest labor force participation in the country.
Okay, noted. Alabama's over there. I'm gonna stay over away from over there.
But also some of the most unusual
Oh, it's actually called West Virginia? Oh wait, no. I was thinking Alabama. No, this is West Virginia. Oh my gosh. Ignore me.
statistical anomalies. The state is quite poor after its major industries like coal mining and manufacturing were either outsourced or simply fell out of widespread use. This means that a lot of areas have effectively been left behind with no major employment opportunities, meaning that labor force participation is much lower than the national average. But strangely, in some areas, the participation rate is much higher than what would be expected. A recent study conducted by economists from Hamline University, Cornell, and Virginia Tech
Oh, I should play on my VR chat again.
found that depending on the county, labor force participation in West Virginia ranges from 42% to 77%, a gap between regions of 35%, while the average across the US states is just 17%, less than half of West Virginia. It's not unusual that cities and working towns will have higher labor force participation than other areas, because people often specifically move to these locations just to get work. But this variance was startling.
At the end of the day, for me, I would prefer living in a town, which I live in a big town. In Canada, technically, it would be considered a city. I believe a population of 10,000 is considered a city in Canada. So I technically I live in a city, but I just call it a very big town.
And uncovered a bigger national trend. The people in areas that still had work can't afford not to work, and the people in areas with no work couldn't afford to move to areas
That looks
with
like a nice
work,
place.
since it could mean giving up family support networks or simply paying for the cost to relocate housing. A lot of people who had the financial means have already moved out of the state, only making this problem worse, as they take business opportunities and money away with them. It's a dense read because it's an academic paper. It's for nerds.
Man, if I didn't have to work, I would probably live like if I had this as my full-time thing, I would not be living in a town or a city. I would just sort of live in like the middle of nowhere, or at least like 10-15 minutes out of town. I guess I wouldn't want to go too far, but I would probably be like 10-15 minutes out of town, just sort of more by myself.
Nerds. But if you ever feel compelled to say that nobody wants to work,
The benefits of living out of town, because I used to live like 20 minutes out of town, and the nice thing is you could like leave house and just keep your door unlocked. Like no one's gonna go in there.
anymore, I definitely suggest you have a look at it. The report itself also looks at welfare issues specific to West Virginia. But just because the state is experiencing this problem the worst doesn't mean that it's in any way just something hurting them. The trend of a few concentrated cities doing extremely well while everywhere else stagnates can make nationwide figures look good. But it also means people who want to work have an option of trying their luck for one of the few jobs left in areas with fewer opportunities, or living in an extremely expensive city to compete with everybody else fighting over a spot in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't do the city. I visit cities from time to time, but like big cities like Vancouver are just way too stressful, and I couldn't see me living there. I would probably put a bullet in my brain if I did.
Places left where people can reliably get ahead. Finance and tech have become one of the last escape ropes for
I do think cities are beautiful, like visiting and looking like through here, but not living.
people to make a deal with the devil to get out of these areas with little to no opportunities. And I am going to be writing an article about how even that career path is becoming impossible in my completely free email newsletter. So sign up if you are interested in reading that and other
What is that picture of Zuck? Dang, he's cheeked up, boys. I didn't know that.
articles that will never be made into videos here. Thanks for watching, and thanks again to MyHeritage for making this video possible. Check them out by scanning this QR code or clicking the link in the description. Now obviously, a lot of this could be handled by companies just allowing remote work, so go and watch my recent video on why companies absolutely will not let that happen for
Yeah, at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the reasons people don't want to work is just due to everything being too expensive and they have no motivation. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on this whole scenario? Comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and preferably my channel as well if you guys are interested. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later, and yeah, peace and God bless you.